Okay, it's going to be another classic Survivor Series review. This is going to be Survivor Series 1996. Here with my brother again. And, Survivor Series 96, it's from Madison Square Garden. And I would definitely say, arguably the best pay-per-view of 96. Definitely in contention for one of the best Survivor Series ever. And, when you look at the star power on this show, it's arguably like the most star-studded lineup. Maybe not at the time, but like in retrospect. I mean, I do think it's possibly, the only show where you had Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin in this, having matches on the same pay-per-view. So it's historical in that regard as well. So, yeah, Survivor Series 96, we have great memory. We weren't at the show. We know people that bragged about going to the show, but I do remember ordering this on pay-per-view very clearly. What were your memories on it?
Well, for the longest time, the thing that stood out the most to me was the Austin Bret Hart match. I think this was the first time that they met, at least at a pay-per-view, and they had an amazing match. I think the match, to me, it really holds up, and I think Bret Hart, watching a couple of his matches lately, we watched the one with Diesel at the Survivor Series the year before, and this one, you just kind of remind you how much punishment Bret Hart took in the ring. I mean, that guy took punishment, and he and Austin were both. I think Bret had more of the crowd behind him because he was still like one of the biggest faces in the world in any wrestling company. But you could hear more and more like Austin pops, when he would start punching Bret with those, that flurry of punches. You could really hear it. So that's what stood out to me most. That was
really?
I thought that was a great match.
Even though that's arguably the match of the year, arguably one, for as good as that was, when I think of this show, I still think about how crazy the ending of the pay-per-view was.
Oh,
it's with Sid and everything. It just felt so chaotic. Yeah, in a good way though. I just thought it was very well done.
Right.
But
when I was a kid, I'll say this. What stood out to me when I was very young, because I was such a big Shawn Michaels fan, I was only in third grade, it was like, terrifying to see him lose the title, and then to see Sid, hit him in the back with the camera, and Jose Lothario took that camera shot. That camera looked freaking heavy, by the way. You could really do some damage with that thing. It's not one of Shawn Michaels' greatest matches, but
it's Sid's best match.
Probably Sid's best match.
And the funny thing about Sid is, it's like when you look at this show, I mean, from Taker the Foley to, all the legends I just named, who's the most over guy in the whole show?
Sid.
It's probably Sid.
Sid was so over. I don't get it. I still don't get it. But I don't know why. But people loved him.
Yeah, for that short term, it only lasted until March. But that was it. But he was for that night. This was his crowning moment.
I think it was really kind of a reflection of the wave that was happening with people were getting older, and the babyface kind of heel era, traditional babyface heel era was starting to end, and the crowd was kind of letting people know.
Well, it's a much different crowd. A Madison Square Garden pay-per-view. It's much different than the Click incident, which was a Madison Square Garden house show, which is more family oriented. This featured a lot of teenagers actually making the trip to go see the show. So I think that's a big difference. But we'll talk more about the crowd reaction later. All right. So first match tonight, you had the Godwins, Doug Furnas and Phil Lafon, who were actually working with ECW at the time, taking on the British Bulldog, Owen Hart, Leif Cassidy, who was actually Al Snow, right? Leif Cassidy and Marty Jannetty of the Rockers, the New Rockers. All right, so what do you think of the opening match? I thought this was great stuff, actually.
You could see just from the year before, the athleticism. There's a lot more athleticism in the ring, a lot of talent. Doug Furnas.
Furnas and Lafon,
Furnas and Lafon. Great. I mean, they were doing moves in the ring that we didn't see. We saw, Benoit, Guerrero, and Jericho doing like 4 or 5 years later. They were, or a little less than that. I mean, they were great.
They looked exceptional. And, I don't know if you knew this, but some people might remember they worked in Japan a lot. They had just come off one of the best ECW matches of all time with RVD and Sabu on, I think it was in September of '96. I mean, they're a hell of, for them to be able to keep up with Van Dam and Sabu creatively, they were very, very talented.
Sabu or Sa fucking Boo? It's the same person.
Sabu.
Oh, it's the same guy. Same guy. Sa fucking Boo. I mean, yeah, but no, that was a kick-ass match. And you say what you want about the Godwins, man. Those guys could go too. I mean, they were
Godwins, yeah.
They really could go, and they had that gimmick. They were kind of stuck.
Yeah, for as big as they were, right?
They were big, and I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of a clothesline.
Yeah. So it was Furnas and Lafon ended up being the sole survivors here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just a great way to start off the show. All right, next up you had Undertaker versus Mankind. In the match, you had Paul Bearer kind of suspended above the ring in a cage. We've seen this before with Jerry Lawler. I think you even saw it with Jericho a couple years ago. So Undertaker and Mankind, this is kind of the blow-off to their feud in '96. Obviously they would wrestle again at the King of the Ring '98 down the road. But what do you think of the Undertaker Mankind match? It kind of gets shitted on, I think, because of the Paul Bearer thing. But I don't know. I thought the match was really good if you could take the Paul Bearer stuff out of the equation. I thought the chemistry was actually better than I remembered.
Yeah, I remember we watched this match a number of years ago, and I really didn't like it. This time around, I was actually pleasantly surprised. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I think what happened was that Paul Bearer being up in that cage, suspended above the ring, made you think that somehow the cage was going to come into play. And because it never came into play, it just felt like, what was the point of that? And the whole point was to keep Paul Bearer
keep him away, because he had turned on Undertaker at SummerSlam.
Right. It was just to keep him away from getting involved. Not a big fan of the Executioner coming down to save Paul Bearer, because that just seemed like a character that they threw together.
It seems like a generic heel. We put a mask on the feud with the Undertaker. We've seen like 1,080,000 times in his career, but yeah.
But the match was good. The match was good, and give a lot of credit to Paul Bearer for, when the match is over and he hears the bell ring, and he hears the Undertaker's music go on. Paul Bearer, his acting was amazing. He looks straight.
He was a character.
He was a hell of a character. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I used to make fun of my friend's aunt. I used to go like, oh, and for years, I was like, where did I get that from? And it wasn't years later we both realized we got that from friggin' Paul Bearer.
Paul Bearer.
Paul Bearer.
Paul Bearer.
Yes, that's right, Paul Bearer. I did want to say this. I remember after WrestleMania, they really built up the mandible claw like it was the end of the world. Maybe by this point the move wasn't as credible. But what did you think of? The mandible claw just in general in terms of this match?
It was one of those things that they, like you said, they built it up. They took the time to really build it up, and it was scary. And if you're a heel, and especially in that era, something like that, people would buy into, because it's just a move that, back in the day, would be before this. Yeah. They'd have guys 20 years before this, they would just put their arm, they were so strong, they could just put their hands on the back of your neck and squeeze, and the baby face would sit down, and he'd go down to his knees. They used to do that to Hogan, really like Andre used to do that to Hogan. Well, this is the same kind of move, only it's a lot more deranged. It's a lot more like, he's going to stick his fingers down this guy's throat and choke him out.
It's kind of a disgusting move, but it was. I mean, it was. I mean, it did really get over. I thought I remember at that time, but yeah, man. So let's move on to the next match. We have Marc Mero coming out there with Sable, Jake the Snake Roberts, who Sonny trashed on commentary with a lawyer joke with the bar exam, which I thought was pretty funny. The Stalker, who's actually Barry Windham, and The Rock, who is actually Rocky Maivia. So this is the first time we ever saw The Rock. Right. And obviously he was the sole survivor here. We'll talk more about that later. Taking on Jerry the King Lawler, Goldust, Triple H, and Crush. Yeah, I mean, Triple H on this show as well. I mean, the star power is just incredible. But yeah, man, this is a very famous match. The Rock is the sole survivor. What did you think of the match as a whole?
Well, it's just fun to look back on if you're a fan of WWE, because you get to see the first time that Triple H and The Rock lock up, you know, and just like the year before, Triple H looks great, moves great. I don't think he gets to showcase his talents as much in this match, but The Rock, you could see the energy, you could see the entertainment aspect.
He didn't get booed
of him.
Here.
You know,
so it was pretty well received.
No, he didn't get booed here. He got booed, months later. But he looked great here. He looked pretty good. You could see why they were like, this guy might have something, and that was good to see. Jake the Snake. I remember when we were watching, he does a clothesline in this match. It's like a short distance clothesline where he holds on to the guy's right hand, and then he uses his right arm and he clotheslines him. It's like a short arm clothesline. The little things that the guys from that era did.
No, I was going to say, like when we reviewed Survivor Series '87, like you could just feel like the tag teams back then. They obviously they're not as high flying as they will become, but fundamentally they were just like, I would say this: the guys that came from the territory system. Jim Ross said that, like, fundamentally they had to be sharp. Like you had to really know what you were doing back then to really, because it was so competitive. So no, I know what you mean by that. And Austin always used to say Jake the Snake was the master of psychology. Like like everything he did had a rhyme or reason to it. So yeah, I agree.
And that holds true in this matchup. And I guess the reason I point it out is because it's for me, as someone who watched a lot of classic wrestling, like over the years, not as much nowadays, but you could see the difference, because going into the Attitude Era, some of that got lost,
right?
Those fundamentals and why, making a clothesline look like it could turn into a 3 count. Not just a regular clothesline somebody kicks up from immediately. There was a meaning behind that. There was an art to that, and I think Jake the Snake deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that for days, but what? The one thing I took away from the match, though, is I kind of noticed a very I can't put my finger on it, but I noticed this from Goldust and Triple H. Definitely with Triple H, you kind of notice a sense of frustration. Like you could just tell that they knew The Rock was going to be the sole survivor, and they looked extremely, like their body language didn't look good.
They were a little stiff.
Like they were a little bit stiff with The Rock.
Triple H was stiff.
Very much so. You could see the competitiveness even going back to here, and it's a shame that Triple H and Rock never had another match at WrestleMania, because that had a level of intensity and competition to it that I think really could have worked. But yeah, man.
Maybe it'll still happen. I mean, I won't be as good nowadays, but
yeah. Well, you got to put yourself. They didn't know. Like even the Rock, like he had an interesting look. Like he still had a ways to go in terms of everything. I think he came off a little bit goofy here, honestly. But the thing is, like they had no idea like who they're in the ring with. It's almost like losing to God almost. There's no shame in it.
Right.
But how are they supposed to know at that time?
Yeah.
It just seemed a little bit forced. Like, oh, this guy's first match is going over all of us. So you can see it in Goldust and Triple H. They seemed a little annoyed, but yeah, that's the way it was.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
All right. So next up, you had all right. So here we go. We had Bret Hart taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin. Madison Square Garden 1-on-1. What did you think of the match? I mean, where does this really hold up for you in terms of Bret's best matches and just overall classic matches?
It's pretty forgettable. I kind of thought this match brought the show down. No, it's the greatest match of the night, obviously.
Wait, is it the match of the year for '96?
Wow, I'm not going to go that far.
Some people think it is.
I'm not going to go
Some
that
people
far.
think it's Bret's best match.
think-
So I know a lot of people are higher on it than others.
Yeah.
I know some people that even prefer it over WrestleMania 13. So
It's definitely not my favorite Bret match. It's definitely, it could be in the top 5 because he had so many great matches and these, you know, big time situations, whether it's Survivor Series, WrestleMania, or SummerSlam, you know. But oh man, Austin and Bret was such a great combination.
no, it really was. No, even Vince said, "Oh, the Hitman has met his match." Like, you know, we finally got someone that could really go toe to toe with Bret.
Exactly.
And at the time, Austin was so respected as a wrestler. Like Bret was like, "I'm gonna face the best wrestler in the WWF." Like it's funny. Like over the years, Austin wasn't known as a great wrestler. So it's just funny how the dichotomy changed.
He really was. I mean, Stone Cold, when he comes out, he cuts that promo, and the promo he cuts before the matches, it's not great, but it's good, you know. But when
the crowd was behind him.
When he comes out, he just stares right at the camera the entire time that he's coming down the aisle, and you could just tell he's dialed it up. He's just he's just on another level, you know, at this point in his career.
So sometimes when you get the, you know, some sort of a big, I'm not saying he had his big break yet, but, you know, he was seeing light at the end of the tunnel. And when you see that light, you know, sometimes it snaps. You become like a tiger. You totally go for it. And,
Confidence.
you know, like I think Vince even said it, like he took the company by the throat and just said, let's go. And, you know, you could see it here. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. He could feel that wave, and you know, he didn't know exactly where it was going to push him, but he could tell it was pushing him up, and Bret Hart. Yeah, it's just another legendary performance from.
Yeah, but you know the match is great though. I have to say, out of all the times I watched the match, this is the time when I think I enjoyed it the most. I just noticed different things here this time. You know, the one thing noticeable is the crowd is not like hot. They're not hot for either guy, but I think, like you said, Bret had his moments, and they kind of gave Austin like that respect that the Garden sometimes gives to like a visiting player. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of times when Jordan was the visitor. Like Jordan talked about how the Garden, sometimes they would give you like, you know, they wouldn't cheer them, but they would give you some sort of like a respect. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Just in their crowd reaction. So it definitely had that feeling, you know, like they didn't welcome him totally, but they kind of reacted to Austin like, yeah, we know you're on the horizon of something huge. Yeah. So I like that about the match. But yeah, I mean, what do you think of the ending? The borrowing the WrestleMania 8 finish. What do you think of that?
I think it worked. In fact, I think it actually looked better than when it did at WrestleMania 8. Yeah, you can kind of say, oh, he used that before, but it had been a long time. It had been.
And plus it worked because Austin did the Cobra Clutch as his finisher.
Yeah, so that was one of Austin's finishers because the stunner doesn't work. The stunner, he uses a stunner, but
he kicked out of the stunner.
He kicked out of the stunner, which was a little bit of a surprise. You know?
Oh, man, you know what's ironic here? Bret actually did the Owen pile driver.
Yeah.
Like he just did it like it was nothing.
That's right. Yeah, it looked dangerous too.
Yeah.
It looked like his head hit the mat even on this pile driver because when Jerry Lawler, who used the pile driver as his finisher, Jerry Lawler would basically just lean back and sit on his butt. But Bret kind of jumped a little bit. He gave himself a little bit of a lift, and when you do that, and you're upside down with your head going into the ring, it was dangerous. No, it's here.
Maybe Owen did it that way because Bret did it that way. So
the only difference was it was in a tombstone. When Owen did it, it was in a tombstone position.
Right. It was a counter.
But he didn't go to his knees.
Yeah.
He went down to his butt and he jumped.
Yeah.
And so maybe if it was in a pile driver position, it would have been a different story. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the match forever, but no, I agree with you. There was just some moments where Bret just took a lot of punishment, you know, getting whipped on the top of the rope, you know, taking the whiplash into the exposed turnbuckle where it looked like he might have bruised his sternum again. So I mean, the match was definitely great, and you know, so I know some people that one person tried to make a case that Austin was the greatest of all time because everybody had their best match with Austin. And he used this match to say Bret had his best match with Austin at Survivor Series 96. And I was like, whoa, man, I never thought about it like that. But this is a wrestler's match, and it really came off great.
Like I said, they both get incredibly, it's stiff, and they both take a lot of punishment. They both came in saying, we're going to put on a freaking show.
Yeah,
and
I love the Iron Man match better than anybody, but, this, if you want to say this is number 2 in 96, then, I got no problem with that. All right, so, the next... We had the Sid promo right after this, and then we have another Survivor Series elimination match. This was kept short, thank God. Savio Vega, Yokozuna, who looked really heavy. Flash Funk, Too Cold Scorpio, and Jimmy Superfly Snuka, who we were doing some research on during the match, taking on Faarooq, Vader, the fake Razor Ramon, and the fake Diesel, who's actually Kane. So yeah, man, this actually ended in a. Thank God it ended in a no DQ. It was just kind of dragging. It had some good talent in it, but you want to touch on Yokozuna first or Snuka?
Well, it was exciting to see Snuka. I think that was the highlight of it. It's just cool to see him come out. I always liked Jimmy Snuka. He was such a positive guy, a lot of energy. I think it's kind of sad to see Yokozuna here because you could just tell he's way too heavy.
Yeah, Vince even looked. Vince got upset during the match. He's like, "Oh, Yokozuna, oh man, it looks so heavy." It's like he broke character there.
Yeah, a little bit. He doesn't look good. And when he was on the apron, Yoko was putting his head down. It was like, man, that's just really sad, because he just looked. He didn't look like he was in a good place.
Yeah, right.
So it's just sad to see.
This might have been his last match.
But otherwise, no, this match got too much time. I think this match should have been like 10 minutes. This match should have been...
Well, I was a little bit nervous because, I totally forgot it was a disqualification. And I was just like, man, no one's been eliminated yet. Like, how much longer is this going to fucking go on?
Yeah, it went on for a long time.
And then all of a sudden, you got a gift. Like, they just disqualified. The problem is, it's like, you're too late in the show. You got to get to the main event.
Yeah, because you and I are watching this as a whole show, and that includes all the entrances, all the promos, and so the entrances, that shit takes time.
But this show was so much easier to watch than your normal pay-per-view that comes out today, so I will say that.
It also is kind of weird to watch Razor Ramon and Diesel watch their entrance music with their entrances with two guys who are not the real, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And it's just weird. Yeah. It's just weird because you get too excited. You're like, these guys were marquee guys, but then it's deflating when you're like,
this is all about the ego. Them. Like, it's like I could take anyone and make them a star. I guess.
I think
the fake Razor Ramon was like laughable though. Like I couldn't. Yeah, it just didn't look good.
I love that song though.
All right, so let's get down to the main event, the WWE Championship match. We have Shawn Michaels defending the WWF Championship against Psycho Sid. So, they didn't show any video package here, so Sid actually turned on him before this match. Do you remember?
I don't remember a whole lot of the build-up, but that's my memory.
Right. Sid's always been like Shawn Michaels' bodyguard going back to, I guess, 95 or whatever. But yeah, man, this, if I were to do a list of top 10 crowd reaction matches, this would definitely make the list.
Yeah.
Shawn was just so hated here.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of it had to do with the gimmick. I think a lot of people felt the title reign was going on too long. And, it just wasn't cool to like Shawn Michaels at this time. Madison Square Garden loves Shawn as a heel, but by this point, things are changing. You could feel it in the air, and Sid was definitely the crowd favorite.
Yeah, I'll never really completely understand it because I think in the ring, I just think it kind of showed like this guy's really not. He's not there. Like I think nowadays. He'd get sent out. He'd been sent back to developmental.
Who, Sid?
Yeah, I just think that at the time Sid was such a force. He was such a presence.
Well, it's all about the look. I mean, he looks like even in ECW they loved him, and it had nothing to do with his wrestling skills. I mean, he just looks like a beast. He looks like he was even in better shape here than the previous Survivor Series.
When he was motivated, I will say he was good on the mic.
Yeah.
And he would do his little psycho laugh, and that was like, oh my God, he was scary, But the crowd was like, it was really behind him, very similar to like Cena going into One Night Stand, 9 years later, I think, something like that, and totally. I enjoy the match. I really enjoyed
The match was a lot of fun. It was exciting, yeah. I mean, there were, after Jose got hit with the camera, Shawn went to go check on Jose, and, there was you thought Shawn Michaels kind of, I heard people say that he kind of panicked once they started booing him, but he kind of embraced the boos.
I thought he did.
Like, there was one, when he went for the figure four, he goes like, fuck you, to, the fans booing him. But you thought he kind of rushed through some spots at certain points?
There was one. Shawn had to talk a lot in this match to Sid.
Well, no, yeah, he did say that the two toughest guys he ever had to wrestle were Sid and Goldberg.
And yes, wrestlers usually call things in the ring, but it's usually not so noticeable. The ones who are really good at it you don't notice it. They're able to do it without, and kind of, because that's the magician's part of the skill of being a magician is you don't give away your secrets. I'm talking like the Heartbreak Kid. But in this match, you couldn't get away from Shawn like mouthing like, now I want you to Irish whip me. Now we're gonna do a back body drop. Okay, we're going for big finish. Yeah,
it really is incredible how you could be as bad as Sid looked at certain points in this match and still be the most over guy this night. It's an incredible a situation to analyze. I'll tell you that.
Those little details you can't ignore, know. And I can't ignore them, but it doesn't mean that it's not a fun match to watch because the crowd is electric. You know, it's
I even remember I thought the rain was going so well. I was just a little bit. But you had that feeling of panic and shock and chaos, and Shawn, consoling Jose and Lothario with Sid. Sid's music really fit the mood too. I'll say it really fit that mood of chaos. That's what I love about the match. But looking back on it, it was really Shawn Michaels' crowning achievement. I felt like Vince fell in love with him this night, though. I really did. Vince was defending him when Jim Ross said Bret could have beat either guy in the main event because he looked so good.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. And, Shawn, it makes total sense, too, because, the Rumble that year, they did better than WrestleMania in terms of attendance and buy rate. So I think the mindset was if you had Shawn chasing for the title, you could sell more tickets at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah. So. And look, Shawn was supposed to main event WrestleMania. We know what happens after this, but I really feel as though you're right. It made sense because at that point he had the championship for a while, and it's not that it was so much him running out of steam, but there was kind of less for him to do as champion.
Right. It was a lot more. The other thing is we're forgetting is they were losing the ratings at this time. So I think Shawn losing the belt made for maybe more compelling television.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. They needed to shake things up. And yeah, you're right. Having him go into the Rumble, chasing the title, was a lot more compelling. He needed to be knocked down off that horse and get back on. Yeah. Hey, we could talk about WrestleMania 13.
That's another thing.
That's another thing.
But yeah, I do want to end the video with this. You did notice that embrace between Bret and Vince on the way back, where Vince goes unbelievable. And it just seemed very awkward. It just seemed like one of those things where, that this girl is gonna dump me eventually. It definitely had that feeling. I don't know how you felt about that. Yeah. It's fascinating because it's a real life thing, and look at Survivor Series a year later. What happened? It's funny how you can notice just a little bit of awkward tension a year before. So I just wanted to make that observation.
Well, Bret wanted to be the man. And I think that Vince was looking at the future saying, you're one of the men. You're not the man. You're one of the best we have. And I think that Bret could feel that. And Bret felt like he really had something that he had to prove.
Yeah, no, I think it's a combination of that. And I think it's also probably a combination of, money as well. I think Vince knew the money was going to be, the contract was going to create a lot of, tension.
Controversy, tension, competition.
For me, from what I've gathered about the situation, it seemed like money was the biggest. I know obviously you have the sunny days things and the belt and everything, but I think money more than anything is what got in the way.
He said, I'm not greedy for money. I'm greedy for respect.
Yeah. No, I love that about Bret.
think that they're-
But yeah, man, this is just a great show. I mean, just overall, I thought it was awesome. So, all right.